Welcome to the School of Moxie podcast. I'm your host, Mary Williams. This season, we're talking about one thing. My business pays for my life. We're not talking about side hustles or someday dreams. We're talking about businesses that actually pay for your life. So your rent and your mortgage, your health insurance premium, the whole kit and caboodle. The thing you are not going to get today in this episode, you are not going to hear my guest read their resume at you for 15 minutes. We're skipping the highlight reel and going straight to the good stuff. We're talking about timelines and trade-offs and the money conversations that not enough people are talking about out loud, but we're about to do it here on this show. If you want to know all the details about who this person is and what they do, that's what the show notes are for. Go check them out. Follow their links. Please support their work because you don't really get to know somebody from just one episode. You get to know them by showing up for their work day after day. That's what they've done for their own communities, and it's what I'm asking you to do for them. All right, let's get into it. Hi, Jeannie. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Mary.
I'm super excited to have you on because you and I connected through a mutual networking connection in late 2025. You were in Portland briefly for a while. Now you're back in very, very fancy parts of the world. Where are you joining us from right now?
Joining from San Jose, Costa Rica.
You've lived on and off there for a while.
Yes, 4 years at the beach, doing the beach surf life, and then quick stint in Portland. Now I'm in the city, diversifying, the Costa Rica experience.
It's fantastic. I will be joining you down there as soon as I can. Everyone this season is talking about their comfort show because, you know me, my whole theory is that the things you watch that are not self-help, business thought leadership, like the fiction that you read and the TV shows you watch and the movies you enjoy, they tell us so much about who you are, how you operate, how you make decisions, your resiliency in life, all those things. So do you want to tell us what your comfort show or comfort movie is?
I was going to say Oprah because I haven't watched that much TV in my life. But I would say that if my current comfort show would be like I love thriller, crime, drama shows. Currently, the Imperfect Women has been one of my go-tos lately, and then currently Cape Fear as well. So anything creepy and kind of like keeps you at the edge of your seat, psychological dysfunction. Sign me up.
Girl, you like intense shit. I love it. You're totally my people. This is why we're friends. But also, can I just make a distinction here? Because I am not going to let us get away from Oprah. I know there's a lot of people are making criticisms about her right now because of her association with the Kardashians and Bezos and all these things. Mm-hmm. However, for us in our age group, like we grew up watching her deliver day after day on daytime talk TV, and the amount of reps that woman has logged is truly, I have so much respect for that and for what she did. And there is an intensity in her talk show that I think is very, because I'm also watching Cape Fear right now and it's so good. And they're actually pretty similar because how many times do people sit in her chair and it's always like, when is somebody going to cry in Oprah's chair? Because she'll get right to the emotional like nerve point because that's where the story is. And whether it was like a celebrity sitting in her chair doing promo for a movie or a show or something, or if it was, especially in the 90s in her heyday when she was doing a lot of self-development and sort of kicked off that whole industry, you know, there would be, in quotes, regular people on her show and you know, they would end up like crying and telling her the whole story and it would help other people. And like everybody bonded over TV in the afternoons because of that like really intense emotional touch point.
Yes.
So I'm kind of not surprised that you like intense thriller shows.
I always used to say, because I was nicknamed Jopra, like when I was in college. Okay. We're talking like I was... And it was, I can tell, I mean, I've memorized the stories of so many everyday people that were on the show back in the day before she was doing soul Sunday, you know, soul sessions, before she kind of earn the right to bring the soul into the brand. It was not that way. She gained the popularity, but it was really the people on the platform that intrigued me, from Gary Zukav to Sarah Van Breakneth to Cheryl Richardson, Martha Beck. Like, those women were my mentors in the industry of coaching, which informed my career path, truly. And hearing the sound of her voice became like the same feeling of going to church, like just like so soothing. I mean, I don't know if church is soothing to everybody, but you get the point. And then just the sad stories, the sad stories of loss that so many people experienced. And I just felt like I was always tucking away in the archives of my mind. Like, I don't know what that's like, but I'll imagine that I'll need to understand something about moving through hard experiences one day. And I don't know, I was just so drawn to the wisdom of the show. Yeah.
Same. I remember like making my college course schedule as such that she would come on at 4:00 in the afternoons in East Lansing, Michigan. And I would make sure that I was in my dorm room before dinner, and I would enjoy my Oprah time. It was like my downtime.
Right.
And my little tiny TV in my dorm room, and I would watch my Oprah show. And she, I think there's a lot to be learned for anyone who's never really sat through a few of those old episodes.
Yes. And also I do think in many ways, I mean, Oprah's had more cringe moments than most people publicly. So I think that was also another great example of like, you're like, well, why'd you do that, Oprah? Like, like that. And yet it gives you permission to just keep going and to say, that was a moment, wish I could delete later. She can't do that, So I think just moving through is just like also a good lesson of like, you're not always defined, but the thing that you're doing in your work in the moment, you can move beyond it, and publicly evolving is okay too. So
I think the way you and I enjoy Oprah probably explains how we have our conversations off of a recorded podcast microphone right now, because we both, talk about trends in business. Both you and I have been doing things a long time, and I always call it like my inner Desperate Housewives person. I'm like, what's the tea? What are they doing? And I think it started with all these talk shows where, you're watching Phil Donahue and Jerry Springer, and you're like, they did what? And then they said, what? How do you feel that a thriller, like an emotionally wrought thriller like Cape Fear, which is so good right now on Apple TV, how do you think things like that, or even just a talk show where they're diving into deep emotions like an old episode of Oprah, what do you think that reveals about your values, your leadership style, your brand? If somebody else is bonding over those things too with you, like how do they know that you're the right person?
Well, I would say that one thing that it reveals is my comfort with uncertainty. So this idea of we don't know what's happening next, and we can just meet the moment, and we can meet the moment in all the weird and all the awkward and all the human mystery and sort of like letting that be okay and part of the process. And so, in a lot of ways, I think that being in that space that scares people is somewhat comfortable to me. I always say if humans do it, then humans do it. Like, humans are weird. We do, strange things. And while of course there's a line of not murdering people and doing extra bad things, like that's just a hard no. What drives people is what I'm so curious about. And so in the instance of Cape Fear, it's like what's driving each character in this moment and how they're operating is just fascinating to me. And that's so much of how I work with people, just really wanting to go under the hood deep.
I love that so much, because you are developing some really interesting things. You have been working with very successful entrepreneurs for a long time, and you don't get to the level that your clients get to without being willing to sit in like a lot of extreme discomfort sometimes. It just doesn't, it's not always easy. It's never going to be easy. And to be, the coach and the service provider who's helping them, I mean, I'm assuming that over time you have had to sit through some pretty crunchy moments and things.
Yeah, I feel so lucky to have lived many lives with people that aren't my direct life, but through them, whether that's an IVF journey, someone who's running a business, but then doing 9 rounds of IVF on the side. I mean, it's going to come into, and she got her miracle baby with her one shot. It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. To conversations about marriage, about money, about all the inner feelings. And I always say often in the first few sessions of like, we want to meet your resistance. So if you're angry, frustrated, like bring all the colors of the emotions, because that actually gives us the best information to understand how to move beyond to the next level of where you're wanting to go in your career and your business. So yeah, I think uncommon to find spaces where that feels really accepting. And, and also, obviously you could see a therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist, but also in a productive, forward moving, like, okay. And I always joke, like, we're going to process something. We might process something for 15 minutes and then we're going to talk about like, closing the deal. Like this is all going to happen in an hour, So, being unafraid to just go there. Evolution is the name of the game.
Everyone who's a guest on this season, including you, were able to answer a very sticky question, which is, does your business pay for your life? And so congratulations. You're one of very few people who answered that question and were able to answer that question. And so what I'm wondering for you is, like, at what point did you realize that your business was indeed paying for your life?
The first 2 years were extremely difficult, to the point where I pushed it so far that I got to that place, the threshold of like, holy shit, I need to maybe go get a job, right? A lot of people cross that. And I think it often happens when you're really passionate, but you're sort of hiding behind this invisible wall of like saying you're going to do it, but like half not doing it, and not just full send, full commitment. So I remember like just feeling really nervous about having a consultation, about talking about my business, all the things. How do you answer the question of what do you do? I made a really, really pivotal choice, which was I was renting an office in New York City for $400 a month. And I barely had any clients. And I met a business coach. And this was like, I was at the breaking point of like, you're going to have to go get a job because you don't have enough clients. We were on a consultation. I was like, I'm doing field research. I definitely can't afford this woman, but she has what I need. And I knew it deep in my gut. And she was $600 a month as an investment. And I was like, there's no way I can do this right now. Like, I cannot afford this woman. And she asked me she leaned into the money conversation and said, would you be willing to just explore this money topic for yourself? And I was like, okay, sure. And she started asking me a series of questions, like, did I have money in savings, or was I willing to reallocate anything? And all of a sudden, I realized, why was I paying for an office? The office in my ego made me official and like legit, but really it was a waste of money. And so I reallocated, those funds to hire her. And then I had to come up with an extra 200. And that choice to hire her as my business coach in 2012 was like absolutely pivotal and changed the entire trajectory of my career, because I was just floundering for way too long. So after that point, I got serious, and also sitting on the other side where it's like, I'm willing to make this investment and other people are willing to make an investment working with me. So sitting on the client side is really important as well as a service provider.
I think it's so important when you get to that point and you invest for yourself, and it's not out of desperation. It's like a smart decision, and something shifts for you, and then it shifts everything in how you end up selling your offers to your clients too. And like, I think that your story is so great because you illustrate, exactly the decision-making process and reallocating funds, because I think you and I both see people right now, the economy is real crunchy right now. And there are a lot of things you need to pay for in overhead with your business, but there's a lot of things that aren't really a necessity. I see it in the content creation space where people are paying like up the nose for all kinds of different SaaS products. And I'm like, you don't need these right now. And it's like, if you reallocated that money, you could get the answers and the help you need instead of just trying to find like stuff through free webinars and whatnot. And
right.
It's a real shift in like a business maturity point when you start to think more strategically about where everything's going.
Yes. And I'll just add to it. And I say, even if you have a lot of resources, you can't just throw money at things and expecting that it's going to work either. Right. So there's like both sides of the coin, which is like, you can hire the best digital marketing agency, but if you're not clear on your brand message and who you serve and what you're really about, and you don't have that inner confidence, like, it's going to fall short. no matter what fancy bells and whistles, you put it in. So it's important to really know what step you're in and be honest about that and find the right support person at the right moment. Yeah.
So like about this time that you reallocate funds and you start getting over that initial hump, because that hump is for real.
Oh, that hump is real. Thank you for acknowledging that. I was terrified. I was like, because it's like my last ditch effort before the job comes again. And I was like, oh my God, if this doesn't work, all bets are on me. Yeah.
Yeah. I always know when I have more mindset work to do, because the thought will come haunting, like, maybe I should just become a barista at Starbucks for the month, And I'm like, what are you doing, Mary? Oh my God,
Part of the process,
it's part of the process, right?
It is.
So like, I'm wondering at that point, what changed about you when your business then became responsible for supporting your life? So like at this point, you're like, oh, I'm strategically reallocating resources in a way that's going to actually help me grow and scale and become sustainable. And like the shiny fancy thing for you was an office. So when you start making these changes, like for you, what changed about you? Do you think it was just like your mindset grew and shifted, or was it other stuff too?
It came along with, well, as far as what changed for me is that it was still very difficult. Like I had to put my skin in the game and like pay, and it was still difficult at that time with my level of income. And so when you put your money where your mouth is, like there's something that changes inside of you where you gain that internal self-respect and self-confidence of like, I'm really willing to do whatever it takes for what I want. And that relationship with myself has really carried me through so much of it, which is like, I'm not selling anything I'm unwilling to do. Like myself, I don't, I'm not sitting like propping up as an expert. It's like I have walked so many transitions, career transitions, developed businesses, supported many people, have a track record, put the time and and I'm not perfect, but I certainly feel like, it's an embodied sense of self-respect that drives a lot of my decisions.
I attract a lot of neurodivergent people because I am rather squirrel-brained myself. And I find that so many of us, we check out of our bodies, and learning to be fully present and being like in your body, being embodied in your business when you are feeling the fear and all the things, you know, that is hard to do, which now makes complete sense why you love thriller shows, because you're not afraid to like sit with that feeling.
Yeah. Also that the mental repositioning of like, I am not here to act like some perfect expert either. Like I am a guide, and yes, I have experience, and I pull on consulting, former experience that informs how I help people short circuit some of their strategic plans in their business development and growth. But like that takes the pressure off of me, and then you can show up authentically. So when you have a consultation and you meet someone and you're talking about potentially working together, like I'm not here to persuade anybody. It's really, I had this consultation when I was 28. I got networked into like a ultra high net worth family. These people could hire anybody. And I was 20, or maybe I was 29. She gets on the call and she's like, I'm richer than God. I was on David Rockefeller's boat. I'm a powerful woman. And she's like, and so I'm going to need someone who's very strong. Like she just said that. And I literally, thank God, I woke up in some mood that day, which was like, I go, Anisha, you sound extremely powerful. Like here, and I said, here's what I do and what I'm good at. And if that speaks to you, then we should work together. Like, I'm not going to compete with the fact that you can literally hire famous people. And she was testing me, and actually we ended up working together. I worked with a lot of her employees. I worked with several of the family members. It was really interesting. But, I also look back at that moment in time where I was still very new. And there's that moment where you go through imposter syndrome. And at some point you just have to call it what it is, and own what you are and own what you're not. So I think that approach as well has helped and served a lot of my ability to show up.
I got another question for you.
Yes.
Do you feel like you work more than some of your peers? Why or why not?
Oh no, you seem to work a lot, Mary.
Don't compare yourself to me. I'm insane. Don't do it.
You're another level. So compared to compared to other people, it's such a tricky question for me to answer. So I would say that for many, 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 many years, I worked quite a bit, and I did a lot between like 3:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. So like that was my window of like I could actually focus, and I probably have raging ADD, and like that was so I did a lot of that. I would go to bed early. So for many, many years, like in my 20s and 30s, when I was living in New York City, when people were going out, I was never doing any of that. I was going to bed, reading books, waking up, working. So I did those cycles for a very long time. In the last several years, I take a lot of space to learn, I wanted to learn surfing, came to a new country. So now it's a lot more balanced. And I would say that, there's a lot more balance to my schedule and a ton of flexibility.
Do you think being in Costa Rica helps give you that balance? Because one of the questions on my list for all of you this season is, what do you pay for health insurance? It is my personal, I'm so curious about it. And you're an American expat, you're living overseas. Like, how does that work for you? Because I have a lot of old business friends who live in like Australia, New Zealand, and in Britain. And they all have universal health care. And then there's a few people up in Canada too. And while those systems are wildly imperfect themselves, they routinely tell me, like, I don't know how you do it over there in America because we have privatized health insurance and you have to pay these premiums. And so they feel like they have more security and flexibility, and they're just a little less nervous for just basic human, like, health care. And the answers that people have had about their health insurance have been very interesting. And I'm wondering for you, like, does being in Costa Rica, like, are there social structures that allow you to feel like you can take more time? Because I will freely admit, like, you watch me over here working my buns off. Part of it is because I just really love what I do, and I'm a hustler, and I like doing that. Yes. That's fine. But there's also, like, I will freely admit, there is a slice of pie in that pie of hustle that is very much driven by, fuck, I got to pay this health insurance premium every month because my body's aging and I'm dealing with some chronic conditions that I need medical attention on. And I cannot pay for that out of pocket. So, like, I'm wondering for you, and this is why I love that you're on this season, because you are not on U.S. soil and life is different when you are in a different place.
Yeah, well, so it was interesting. I mean, I've paid currently pay $260 a month.
So jealous.
Okay. But that, and historically I paid $430. I used to pay $430 here. I was on a Geo Blue international plan. My strategy, and I'll just straight up say it, is I go for really high deductible because I don't have a lot of healthcare needs, and I'm willing to pay out of pocket for the things that I do. So I go low premium, high deductible, and just try to not get injured. So it's more of a catastrophic situation for me. Now that I'm getting older, landed in the ER last week, and I actually had a gap in my insurance. I had a gap in my insurance coverage, and I was in the States. So, and surprisingly, by the grace of God, it really wasn't that bad. So again, just the allocation of funds. Living here, for example, I went to go get a prescription in the States. It was going to be $60, and here it was $17 for the same medication. So there are some advantages, in the system here. If you need dental work, come on over. A lot of people do like vacation, healthcare tourism, get a nice vacation while you're recovering. So it sort of depends. But I also spend a lot in terms of my actual health, like prevention, sports and wellness stuff. I definitely spend a lot.
I have another question for you. What have you given up in order to build a business that fully supports your life? Do you feel like you give things up? Like, you've told me the story already about in the early days, you did the hustle and grind. You were like, everyone else is having fun partying, but I'm like doing my self-education and I'm making sure I get enough sleep so I can get up and I can do it again. But now that you're this far along in your business journey and you look back, like, do you feel like you've had to give things up that maybe other people haven't as a result of being more financially independent?
Yeah. I don't own a home. I mean, it's still the lifestyle choices. I don't currently have a car. I recently moved back to Costa Rica. I did have cars previously. My lifestyle is a little bit unconventional. I mean, my car used to be a 1990 Rocky Daihatsu, like jungle car, right? Actually, then I moved to the States and I got the top of the top Toyota Crown Signia with hefty lease, and it was really interesting because the car was a lemon. There's only 30. This is worth telling. There's only 30 or 40 of them made, and it started melting from the inside out. I concurrently decided to move back to Costa Rica. I was on a 3-year lease. I had negotiated with the guys at the dealer. By the way, people, stay long enough and you could get a good deal. I negotiated $4,000 off, which was crazy. Anyway, the point is, it was still a ridiculously expensive lease. And that was last year. And then I was like, shit, this is a lot of money. Like, I kind of wanted to come back to the US and be like, I want to have the nice things that everybody else has. Right? Because I was living in the jungle, driving cars where there was like terrible AC and older and model, and cars are double the price here. So you get like, for the same price, like a 2015 Toyota RAV4. And you're like, that's an awesome car. In the city, it's a little different. At the beach, all the cars break down because the roads are so bad. So long story short, I did the very, North American thing, get the nice car. And then when I wanted to make another life change, I was like, wow, this is really going to like confine me. Cause like I have this 3-year lease. Now I have to sell it to somebody. It was really stressful. And I learned a big lesson. I actually was able to sell the car back to the dealership, like by the grace of, my angel team. But basically if I was strapped with that, I was like, wow, these things really can confine us. Because if I was carrying that bill all this time, it would have just kind of like set me really off balance. And now looking back, it's like, there's been a recurring voice in my head ever since I came to Costa Rica. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And it was the first time where I started to say, just because you can go buy that thing doesn't mean you should. And so how are we like very unconsciously adopting these things that we need that we might not need? Yeah. And I think that that's like an important thing to ask yourself as an individual, like what moves me, and deciding, like just not adopting these habits that we have about the things that we need, whether that's your apartment, the size of your house, the number of cars you have, like whatever. I think we really have to stop and consider what matters for us.
I think like there comes this point where you realize, oh, I am either by means I have to be financially responsible for everything, or by just desire, oh, I can do this. You start to realize like, oh, wait, I don't need to buy like those things. Though maybe they're status symbols, or maybe you just see other people bragging about it, or you see like I could go get XYZ. Mm-hmm. Strategically is not a good strategy for you, because it means that you can't then grow and be sustainable. And
yes,
for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think that anything's easier though now that your business pays for your life?
I love the feeling that I control my upside potential and downside. But the feeling of, some people are going to go to work and work really, really hard, but they're going to be capped. And there really is no cap. I mean, there is to some degree, but it's like I can continue to grow my revenue year over year should I decide to. And so like the feeling of that autonomy is really like feels like such freedom. Now, with that said, I'm not an endless well of energy, especially I'm now in my 40s. I'm like, ooh, used to be running on a 6 throttle engine, and then we got about 3.
Yep.
Values have shifted, where before it was about validating, like I can do it. I can hit all the mountaintops of the things that I dream about, the kinds of people that I work with. And now I'm not driven quite by just the sheer achievement. It's really about like, okay, so what for? What do I assign that growth in revenue to? For example, I bought land here. I want to build a beach house. So like, okay, that makes sense, because it's going to be a place where I commune with my family and friends. And,
on one hand, like your first answer for what have you given up was, well, I don't own a house. But it's like, girl, you bought land. Like I know about your plans. Like you have plans to do things that are much more aligned with you personally, but also are just honestly really fucking cool. Like you're not going to do that in a suburb somewhere in an American city. Like you're just not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes underneath that, the symbol of the house, because honestly, I'm so glad I've been a renter for all these years because it enabled me to live in
Hmm.
different places, build relationships, meet different communities, learn so much, and have a rich life, which is not just
Yeah.
money. However, I think there's moments where I envy some level of stability, of rooting, of feeling like, yeah, I mean, the
Yeah.
grass is always greener for sure. And we all think that
For
way.
sure.
I think that's always going to be a truth no matter where you're sitting.
I'm sure there's somebody who is owning a house right now listening to you, and they're like, wow, that'd be so amazing.
Yes, yes, yeah. Shackled by the mortgage or whatever. But yeah.
Please leave Jeannie a comment on this episode.
Yeah, I know. I
Validate your life choices. Do you have a business expense that nobody warned you about?
Oh, I was gonna say like a cheeky kind of like beauty thing or like everything is an expense for me, right? Nobody warned me about. Just me as a liability. I don't know. My moods as the biggest liability to my performance and ability to earn. Like, yeah, that would be the biggest thing I didn't realize, right? When you get the case of the I
Yeah.
don't feel like it today, and you're like, screw your
Uh-huh.
feelings, follow the plan, and then being like, it all falls on me. Wait, it all falls on me. So the
Yeah.
downside of that, but an actual expense, I run pretty lean in general. So I'm not, I consider myself lucky being a remote and
That's
virtual
awesome.
worker.
I love your answer because I actually think that our mercurial moods are really, I had not thought about it till you said that. I'm like, oh, that is an expense. That's an expense. Those
Yeah.
spicy days where you're just like, fuck you, and fuck your little dog too. And then you're like, oh no, what am I doing?
Yeah, you know what it is? Actually, the coffee expense, right? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
I have to wake up, and my thing is, I like to really get up and get out of the house, and I don't want to use single use plastic, but I like really love being served a cup of coffee
Hmm.
before I serve the world, and so the monthly coffee expense can be close to. And cafe expenses when I want to like shift the energy can be up to
Mm.
like between $200 and $300 a month. My accountant's like,
Yeah.
and I like to make coffee, but sometimes it's about the social connection. Especially if you work from home, you like I need to be fed
Yes.
by like the environment and like getting out and moving my thoughts. It's like a whole
Yes.
process. So I was,
It is.
was not aware of the coffee expense being like a major line item on my monthly cash flow.
No, I completely relate to that because like I'm super introverted. Like I poop out on people so quickly. But if I need to write a really great piece of public facing copy, like a good sales page or a good conversion email sequence, I take myself to a public place like a cafe because then when I'm in the mix of people, I don't go into turtle mode when I'm writing.
Yes, it's
And
real.
and you should be buying drinks from your cafe and you should be tipping your barista and all the things and like, dude, that shit adds up.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like, oh, I work so much. I need to also get lunch.
You're like, it was such a hard day. And no, this is me. I'm so terrible. I'll be like, you know what sounds good? Sushi sounds great. And I'm like, oh
Sushi always
God.
sounds great. Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like 50,
Yeah.
$60 later.
Keeping the CEO happy is a major expense.
That might be the best answer to this question all season. The expense of keeping the CEO happy. Oh, good. Well, in relation to $50, $60 sushi lunches to keep the CEO happy, if your business suddenly lost 50% of its revenue tomorrow, what would you do first? I mean, I would definitely be cutting out sushi lunches, but what would you do if you suddenly lost 50%? Because
Interest.
these realities, they happen to us.
My instinct would be to call my previous clients and call my family. Not that they would. I've come from my parents were both teachers. I always felt. I think it's great families, especially living in a Latin community, like Latin culture, like how families share. But our family is a little bit more hyper independent, and I always felt very yeah, I never wanted to like burden my parents after they gave me such a good education in my life. So anyway, I come from that school of thinking. Yeah, I would call my previous clients because I have really beautiful relationships with them. Maybe ask for ideas and just start the conversation and show my vulnerability. Now, I don't think that would have been my answer years ago, but I would be like, "Hey, I think I need to pivot." And or I would just go get a job. And I think that was the second point of like the humility to go do what you need to do.
I think there's no shame in getting a bridge job.
Yep.
Sometimes you need it, and sometimes you need to cover the bills so that you are not in a desperation point, so that you can make better decisions and come back to whatever it is that you're building.
Yes.
I mean, I did that at the beginning of COVID, and it worked out really well.
In 2015, I took a full-time sale business development job while I still kept my practice.
Yes. Yep.
And I opened the 24th office for a creative marketing staffing agency. And it was my opportunity to move from Brooklyn to Connecticut, relocate to be closer to my mom. I was really curious. This company was scaling at a rapid speed. And I was so curious about their operational efficiency and sort of like, I was like, why don't I get paid to get like an MBA kind of, So
Yeah.
I worked my butt off that year because I kept my practice and I would take calls at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. It was a rigorous year, but it did offer me like some things that I had needed. And so I think it's important to just be really honest because at different points you could become too isolated. You could be like, just stalled with your creative production because you're not getting ideas from other people and you don't have that like the camaraderie. So you really just have to be honest.
I love that you brought that up because one of the questions that everyone's getting asked this season is about what other entrepreneurs might misunderstand about becoming fully self-supporting through their business. And I think this point about there's no shame in sometimes taking on additional work where you are technically employed in some sense. It could be contract, it could be, in the States, W-2 paycheck, but you understand that doesn't mean that you are not an entrepreneur or that you are not still doing what you're doing now. I know there's some people who have to give up, the freedom and flexibility to like run their own coaching practice or whatever on the side. But I think most of us find things when those lean times come around, and they have come around before. And a lot of us did that during COVID. We supported people who had better pipelines, and I supported people who were getting $1 million launches, coached thousands of people, got so much user data that I never would have seen any other way. It was fascinating.
Right.
And then when the time was done, it was done, but that was a rocky period. The market was disrupted. We all were forced to completely change how we worked. So I see that kind of happening again with like the AI disruption that's going on. I don't know that we're quite in the thick of people doing the humble pie self-serving just yet, but like I can see it coming for people.
This is a really important point. And I remember at one stage early on in my business, I had this tea bag with a little saying on it. And it said, when ego is lost, limit is lost. You become infinite, wise, and beautiful. And at that time, I had moved to a new city. I had wanted to meet this very famous coach. And I found out through some very creepy internet stalking, like who his wife was. And then I basically, through a series of events, found out she was running a fitness brand in town. And then I randomly was on Facebook, and it was like part-time job as the front desk girl for $10 an hour. I was coaching ultra high net worth people, right? So I'm like feeling my swag and was like, I got this thing. But I was feeling isolated. I was in a new city. I didn't have community, and I didn't really want to pay for the gym membership, but I wanted to be part of that community. So I was like, and I remember thinking like, this is so embarrassing. At the time, I really did feel that way. I was like, I went to the 27th best college in the country, all the egoic, like, and then I interviewed and I worked there 4 nights a week, $10 an hour, and had the experience of people walk in and treat me as invisible because I'm just like the front desk girl. And it was one of the most profound experiences for me in my business because I'm like, I got nothing to prove. And there was like an energy running through me about like just that ego, and I'm, wanting to prove that and it just really gave me that humble pie that actually gave me so much inner self-respect like I'm willing to do anything, and like nobody has to understand why this serves me. And I think that's one of the most important points. Make the right decisions for you and your business. And you don't, it wasn't like I wasn't doing the thing that I wanted to do. It was just that I did this as in addition to that. And I was actually really proud that I was the type of person that would do that.
Do you think that there are business programs, like coaches, communities that are not talking enough about the things that keep people stuck in dependency pattern when it comes to getting business help?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I would say that unless it's a program where you're getting some sort of interaction, then I'm really skeptical, because the industry is changing and we need some live support. So in terms of what people are talking about, I don't really even know what people are talking about. I would just say in the world of like digital courses or being in some fancy, expensive mastermind, again, I think it's so important that people just consider the step that they're in. And most information you can find for free. So it's really about mentorship, in my experience, that will accelerate advisorship, mentorship. It could be a group coaching program like the dojo, like you have. Like, I think that's amazing, where you can get a little information, but you need the guidance that can meet you in the step that you're in. Because like I tell most people, it's like, we can all understand a go-to-market strategy. We can like Google and AI everything and figure out a plan. That's not what keeps us stuck. It's usually the psycho-emotional sort of barriers to taking that next step, or our personal patterns, or just overcomplicating things, when with one conversation you could short circuit the path forward. And doing it with accountability is really, really important. So I think without the accountability, a lot of those things are just missing the point.
I totally agree with you. The human part's still very needed. Do you have a bill that you're weirdly proud to pay?
Well, I had learned this from Louise Hay years ago, but like being happy to pay bills in general. I was talking to this guy friend, and he was like, whenever I paid bills, I felt like it was a loss. And I was like, that's so interesting, because I feel like I mean, not that I'm always thrilled about paying like I get stressed, when the expenses stack. So like, don't get it twisted. I really love when I'm able to be generous with people. So whether that would be like hosting a really nice dinner with friends, or supporting freelancers in all different areas. Yeah, I love contributing to people that are like working for themselves and have a dream. Like that is like, nothing is better than feeling like I see you and I understand the plight, and like this feels it feels super satisfying.
I recently did a buy me a coffee tip for a really good biz bestie who like put out a call to like drum up some funding for her show. And it was so nice to be like, times 5. Like, the coffee's only $5 a cup, times 5. Like, let me buy you some coffee. It was so nice to be like, I'm like, this to me seems like such a small thing, but for the creator on the other end is such a big thing.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we think that the thing we have to do that feels oddly generous has to be like, I don't know, just like this ginormous grand gesture. And it's like, a lot of really things are very grand gesture like when you get down to it. Like hosting a dinner, you enjoy doing it. And yes, there's an expense. Like, you're going to pay for the food or the venue or the whatever. But to the person receiving it, like, that may be exactly what they need to like refill their energy cup and not feel alone. And
yeah, I like buying from artisans and some of my clients who make stuff, and gift that to my other clients, or the Enneagram. Some of my clients do the Enneagram or Strengths Finders, and then I get them a session or an astrology session. So like that, it just feels good. It feels good to use the money and in transact, but then also make introductions through the network concurrently. I love that.
Oh, I love that you're like doing it through an ecosystem. That is super cool. Okay, we have talked about so many things. I'm asking everybody at the end of their episodes to do a Mad Libs fill in the blank sentence.
Okay.
So I want you to finish the sentence. The sentence is, my business pays for my life, and that means fill in the blank.
My business pays for my life, and that means I'm a free agent, baby. That means I make the rules. No, yeah. And that's pretty much what I live for.
I mean, that is really what it's about, right? Freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
we don't have anyone else telling us.
Exactly. And freedom is different for different people. Some people are going to feel free when they can have the 401k matching and their retirement plan is a little further ahead than mine. Envisioning having, a place at the beach with people that I really deeply care about in like a safe blue zone feels more like a better retirement plan than a 401k matching. So to each their own, but knowing how you're wired and what you need. And at the end of the day, my choices are my own for better and for worse. And that's what I'm driven by. So,
well, thank you for sharing that, because there is somebody who will listen to your episode and they're going to realize, oh, these are the words that have been running around in my pre-verbal state and space. And I always know it happens every time I record something with someone and put it out in the world. There's always somebody who responds and says, I needed to hear that. So thank you for doing that for your perspective.
Thanks for having the best questions. Truly. You're fantastic. It was a real honor. Thanks for having me.
All right, Jeanne. Well, everyone can connect with you at all the links and info that I have in the show notes for your episode. And I would encourage people to reach out to you. You've got a new program that's coming out, and the link for that will be in there. And you are definitely somebody I trust in my network. I would say people should just go click. That's it for this episode of the School of Moxie podcast. This season was produced and edited by me, Mary Williams, through Sensible Woo and now Sasquatch Media Grounds out of Vancouver, Washington. If you're a business owner and you want help building your own media engine, maybe it's your podcast, your YouTube channel, your content, the whole visibility machine, come and subscribe to my emails at sensiblewoo.com/subscribe. I'll show you how it's done and I'll hook you up with the good stuff. See you on the inside.